application team, and this is our Facebook Live for DesignShop Talk, where we try to go over whatever questions you might have for the week. So let me make sure it's all running. It should be. Says sending data. All right. Doesn't say I'm live yet, so I apologize if I'm talking. I'm just got my little screen over here. All right. There we go. Apologize for the little delay there. And let me get the screen up so I can see comments. And then we will be off. There. Sam. Excellent. All right. Well, good morning again. My name's Samantha. I'm with the application team, and we're going to be going through whatever questions. If you have questions, feel free to type them in on the comments. Don't send them privately to Melco. I can't see those. So if you type them on this feed here, I'll be able to see any questions and get them answered during the talk. All right. So to start off with, these are some of the questions I got ahead of time. So we'll start there and then jump over to any that you might have. All right. So when using the alphabet editor, what's the smallest measurement I can use? I'm trying to take a 1/4 inch font that I bought and work at 1 inch. All right. So this is kind of two questions. Is one, how do you use bought fonts like a DST type format and put them into the alphabet editor? So you can't use the 1/4 inch font is kind of the short answer. Really what you need to be doing is digitizing them specifically in DesignShop. So not one you buy, but you digitize it yourself in the alphabet editor, because it's the way that editor works. You need a 1 inch font that will then scale. Well, if you're taking a 1/4 inch DST, for example, I have a few. Let me go open one. Let's see, where did I put them? And again, good morning, everybody. All right. So where did they go? There. I put a few in today's folder. All right, so this is just a font that I bought. It's the smallest. I just want a small one. So how tall is that? Not quite a 1/4 inch, but that's 0.3. So it's a DST file. It's expanded. It's not wireframe based. It's literally just a set of coordinates of where all your stitches are going to go, right? So when you have it like that, when you try to scale or stretch it out, those stitches are going to move. The software will try to interpolate between it and add more points, but the reality is there's no math there. There isn't a wireframe. There isn't a set density. It's just stitch points that the software is going to guess about how to interpolate between to add additional stitches if necessary. Or if you have that feature turned off, then it's just going to stretch them out. So the larger you make it, the worse it's going to, the more spread out the stitches are going to be. It's not going to look as clean. The smaller you try to compress it, the denser and the more difficulty you're going to have with sewing and clarity. And you might even get to a point where the stitches are just too small for use. So to avoid that, what you really want to do is take these, whatever font you want, and digitize it yourself. So rather than taking, a DST that you bought and trying to copy and paste it into the alphabet editor, right? Well, you can do that. What you're going to notice is without it being in wireframe format, it's not going to work as well when you try to change it. So if you're going to try to bring them into the alphabet editor, you want them to be a 1 inch font, not a 1/4 inch, and copy and paste them in. But then remember, scaling isn't going to work very well. Okay, so might not be the exact answer you were hoping for, but that's what you got. All right. And when I add the font as is, the space between each letter is off. That has to do with the kerning. So if you go over to, again, DesignShop, where did I put it? There we go. Okay, so when you go to DesignShop, let's see this. There we go. This thing right here is what's going to define your kerning. So you can adjust that back and forth, move that around, and that will adjust the spacing between the next letter. So how close and how far apart things are. So that's what you would want to play around with. And I would just, try some things, type it out, see how it works so that you get the hang of what it's actually doing for you. And that'll help adjust your kerning. Okay. let's see, what else do we have? Is there a contour fill? No, that's not a current feature. If that's something you'd like to see, please send that request in as a feature request. You can send it to applications@melco.com and we'll get those added to the feature list. I'd personally love that. So yeah, send it in. I see where I can make a circle. Where can I make a rectangle as a fill or satin border, etc. All right, let's do some shape inputs. Okay, let's get out of the alphabet editor. No, I don't want to save that. No, I don't want to save that. All right, I'm going to create a new file, and let's start with just a single line center. All right, so that's a constant width column of stitches is what you've got there. So right here, when I click that, you'll notice down at the bottom I've got a circle input tool, which if you hover over it, you'll see it says select automatic circle input. So if you've never used that, if I left click on that, now it's highlighted, so I've got my single line center and my automatic input. Left click, and then drag my mouse and you'll see it's making a shape. It's an oval. If I hold my shift key down, that locks it to a circle. So while the shift is clicked, I hit a left key and there we have it. All right, so that gives me a perfect circle as a single line center. So from there, you could change its width. Now, to do the same thing for a rectangle, you would choose your single line center. I would come down here to select automatic input. Once that's selected, now left click and drag. I can hold shift alt, I can hold alt, hold whatever keys you want. Shift locks X and Y. So shift and click, now I have a perfect square that I kind of tipped. All right, and then again I can change its width and all those fun things. All right, so that uses your single line. Now for a fill, it's the same technique. I use right here my complex fill. I choose the rectangle tool, left click, there you go. I have a rectangle. Same with a circle. Click your complex fill, click the circle, left click, drag, left click again, and now I have a circle. I did not hold the shift key, so it did it as an oval rather than an actual circle. Okay, so there's that. What else do we have? And again, remember, if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in on the comments, and I'll try to get them answered while we're live. I'm new to Melco, but I'm trying to sew patches in a larger hoop, so I thought I set it up, but when I went to the next patch, it sewed over the first. So how do I set up the machine to do multiple patches? So it really depends on how you're setting up your file for how you set up your machine. Okay, so I actually did connect my machine so I can set that up, but let's work on the DesignShop side first. Okay, so let's say, go away. I'm going to open up a patch file that I made ahead of time. I guess we can make it again. Yeah, I'll open it so I have something to stare at, but I'll go ahead and make it again so you can see how it was done. All right, so let's say I want to make a 4x2 patch. There's actually a question next about how to do a 4x2, which is why I picked that size. So this one, you can see it's roughly 4x2. Okay, how I drew that and created it is create a walk input, and then I did a rectangle, and I just drew a rectangle. I didn't really pay attention to the sizing. Then down here, I click on that walk input. I say I want it 4 wide, and then turn off the lock. Click on that and say too tall. So now I have a 4x2 rectangle. Now, if I want those corners curved, what can you do about that? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just line this up with the grid. And let's say I want the curves, I'm going to choose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to put a point there, and then I'm going to again count 5 grids and put a point there. Why did I do that? Well, now if I choose my corner and hold the control key down and drag, notice how by holding control, when I left click and drag, it makes that a dot. Well, that's going to make it a nice pretty arch. Okay, so I can move that around and that'll kind of arch this nicely. Okay, so let's say just for speed, I'm going to do the opposite corners and then leave it be for now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4, 5. I'm going to left click on the corner, hold my control key, left click or control while the control's held, left click and drag. All right. So let's say that's the shape I want. Let's turn off the grid now so we can actually see something. All right. So that's our walk. Now we need to copy and paste it. So I'm going to you can duplicate it by right clicking and going to duplicate. You can copy paste. Duplicate's fast. So, or Control C, Control V gives you the same general thing. All right. So I've got my placement, my walk. I'm going to copy and paste it again, change its color. Now a trick for converting this is that you can hold the control key down and click on the single line. That converts it from that walk to a single line center, and we can make that a tackle with maybe a 30. All right, so I've got my placement. So placement, that holds the fabric down where I can then cut it. Then I do a zigzag to tack it down. Now if you're going to have names or whatever, you can embroider that on here. I'm just going to bypass that, duplicate this again, and now we're going to do the satin border. I'm going to change it to a satin with, let's say, 40. There. All right, so now I have a patch. All right, so now that I created one from scratch, let's delete that, maybe delete that. All right, so now I have this. Now, if you're going to go set that up on your machine, what do you do about it? So I'm going to save this as another, just because I want to. There. All right, so if I go over to my machines, what do you do? So I'm just messing with number 5 here. I'm going to load my design, go find that file I just created, and voila. Notice it's outside of the hoop. The dark line means it's outside of my hoop limits. Well, I'm not at the keypad, so you can't see that. So I'm just going to hit center hoop. Say OK. Oh, look, it's actually centered, but my thing is not on the screen, is it? Okay, so why is that? Well, if I turn this on right here, this is back to DesignShop where we created the file. And I'm going to zoom out a lot. Notice this red crosshairs, that is the center of the hoop. This is up to the, top right-ish, right? Which is where you could see it on the screen on my machine as well. So whenever you create your sewing files, you want to make sure you center them. So how do you do that quickly? Right here. If I deselect everything and just say center, it's going to center it on that crosshairs. Now when I save it, if I go back to my machine and reload my file, there's another trick where you don't have to reload file. Let's see if it already updated. There. Okay, so it loads right in the center of the hoop. So the reason I showed that is we had another question that was, well, how do I, this isn't centering right. How do I do that? The other way you can do it within the OS, if that was up there, right here, this button centers the design. Okay, so now how do we set it up to be a patch? Well, when you go into your color sequence, you've got your thread tree. This is our color sequence. So I always like to step forward through it so I can see it. Step 1 is going to do that placement stitch. So I just did that as color white. Then I hit the applique button. So if I clear all, white applique. What that means is it's going to sew step 1. When it hits the applique stop, the hoop is going to come out from under the needle case and sit there. So then I can go grab my, So then I can go grab my fabric, lay it down on top, and be good to go. Then I'm going to do another applique, stop, lay the fabric down, sew it. The hoop comes out again. Now I can grab my scissors and cut around my shape. Then the next step is going to be that tackle stitch. So white, and then I can go straight into the border. Let's say I make that border white. Okay, so it sews one patch. Now if you're going to do this on a larger hoop and you want to sew that over here, what are you going to do? Well, you can use your hoop and arrows and move it over here so that it now sews up in the corner of your hoop. When you want to do your next one, after it finishes that one, you literally just move your hoop over and set it. So if you only digitize the file to be one patch, that's how you would set it up. And then to continue to fill the hoop, you would just move your hoop around after every patch. Now, if you're going to do that, rather than doing it that way, what I like to do is go back to DesignShop and set up the file to allow for doing multiple patches. So what I just did is right here, I clicked on that, right clicked, changed it to my large hoop, and then turned the hoop on so I could see it. Now what this is going to allow me to do is set up my my design file so that I can sew multiple patches. So what's a way we can do that? Well, I can select my design, go to Object, Step and Repeat, and let's say we're going to do 3 by 3, space between columns, let's do 1/2 inch, space between rows, 1/2 inch. I can preview it, looks good enough. So I did 3 columns, 3 rows, 1/2 inch between each, say okay. Yeehaw. So now I have it set up to do 9 patches. And you'll notice my color changes, there's a lot of them. It goes down to 36. So if I save that, I'll show you 2 ways we can set it up on the machine. No questions so far today. All right. So first off, we got to load the file. So there it is, 4 by 2 repeats. Voila. All right, so now I have it set up for 9 patches. If I go into my color sequence, you notice I have 36 color changes, but I could do it this way. Yeah, let's just erase, so do 5, applique. Or actually, no, we'll leave it like that. All right, so what is it, if I just do 4 color changes, hit apply OK, how is that going to run? All right, so remember, oops, the steps in my design. What will happen is it's just going to keep on cycling through those 4 color changes until it gets to the end. And since each patch is 4 color changes, that works fine. So it'll do step 1, it'll do the placement, hit an applique, I can lay the fabric down. So it'll finish up how you expect a patch to do until it gets to the end of color 4. That's the end of the first patch. So if I step through that, you'll see now that first patch is complete. Then it doesn't have a color 5, so it's going to go back to color 1. So now it's going to do the placement stitch for this one, then it's going to hit an applique. So that will let you go through each of them with the exact same sequence, just working your way through all the patches where they're not sewing on top of one another. Good morning, Rick. They're just sewing, one at a time across here through one file. And that makes it a little easier so you don't have to set up a gazillion color changes. That works well if you have the same design with the same steps being repeated. Okay, now if they're not the same thing, then you're going to have to work your way through it, stepping through or knowing what your files are to be able to work through what colors you're going to have, where you need your applique stops. Now remember, the only difference between applique and hold is applique takes the hoop and it pulls it out from under your needle case and it sits there until you hit the green button again. Hold, it stays under the needle case and it just stops. I personally use applique a lot, mainly because I don't pull the hoops off. It comes out, and I've gotten so used to using my scissors, which I happen to have on the floor down here, so let me show you. I've gotten used to using my little scissors here to be able to cut around the hoop, around my different shape without having to pull the hoop off the machine. Okay. So let's see if that answered those questions. We had, all right, that's how do I set up the machine. So that's with your applique. And again, this was the same question with 2x4. So I kind of did both of those, doing multiples and a single. All right. I put a name on the screen and then tried to center it. It disappears unless I do the undo arrow, and my design still doesn't get centered. Why is that? That was what I was just showing with, so if I just open up DesignShop, right, and somewhere on the screen I type a name, right, if all things are created the same, all right, let's do that again on a new file. So let's say I just click up here and I type my name. I put, use my zoom to get it on my screen, and I'm happy. So I save it. I go load it. File, save as name. It kind of looks centered. And then I come over to my machine. Where did I put the machine? There it is. Cancel that. Go away. All right, load design. name. Okay, it's not centered. And in fact, if I have a small hoop, that's too small. Let's try that one. And then I say center hoop. Hey, it's not centered. Well, right here you can say center and it will recenter it within the file itself. That's a temporary fix. The better way to do it is to go back to your original OFM file and click this button. Notice when I did that, it disappeared off the screen. Where'd it go? Well, right here, if you say fit window, it'll refit it to your screen. Basically, where it went is, if I hit undo a few times, where that went was if it was up here, and if I turn on the red things, it makes it easier to see. When you tell it to center, I was zoomed in all the way up there. When I told it to center, it moved down here. So because I was zoomed in on this little area, it made it look like it disappeared when it's really just down here. So all you have to do is fit selection, and it'll fit it back to your screen. Okay. All right. How do you do this? All right, we'll do that. Okay. So I don't know how much you want to go into that. I went ahead just because I felt like it. And I started from the very beginning just to create a design from start to finish. So I went into Illustrator just because it's easy for me. And I typed out, found a font that I didn't hate, created the text, right click on it. Actually, I'm going to copy and paste it because I don't want to get rid of that. All right, let's move it out of the way. So then I selected it, went to create outlines, then I went to Pathfinder. So some of this is just create your artwork. This is just how I did it. So I created this. Once I had a vector, I get this question a lot. What do you do with vectors? How do you get them into DesignShop? Well, if you copy that and then you go to DesignShop and just paste, it'll drop it right in there for you. Okay, so this one came in with weird stuff that I didn't clean up in the Illustrator file, so I went ahead and cleaned those out because who needs all that? There we go. And then I don't want that. I'm going to delete that. There we go. Ooh, I got rid of the dot by accident. Anyway, you get the idea. You bring in whatever art you want. Now that I did that, I'm going to go open up the one that I already did. So I have things to turn on and off. All right. So once you get your art in there, and so there's my original art, the name. Then what you can do is to create that kind of outline, there's several ways you can do it. You can draw it yourself, which if you don't have a higher level of DesignShop, that might be the way you need to do it. Okay. So to draw it yourself, it's literally just eyeballing it, right? So you would come over here. I like working in vectors when I start just to avoid things. And you literally just kind of work your way around your shape, creating the outline that you want, whatever that might be. Okay, so however contoured you want it, that's what you would do. Okay, and these type of forms look cleaner if you keep them relatively consistent. I'm pointing at my screen. How helpful is that? All right, let's move this so I can point with my mouse. There we go. So if you keep the distance relatively consistent, it will look cleaner by the time you're done. Okay, so the other way you can, and all you would do is keep tracing around. Once you're done, you can then go move your points around. Let's say you didn't like, that wasn't clean enough for you. You didn't like how far apart, or the curve wasn't just right. You can keep on adjusting your handles until you get the look that you like. Okay. Once you have your shape, now from there it's simple. Let me show you another way to create the shape. I like doing it this way. I take this original one, okay, and I'm going to copy and paste it. All right, so that was my original artwork. I copy and paste. I'm going to go back to the one that's in the back, and I'm going to go Object, Offset Outlines. That is a level dependent feature, and I'm going to do an offset. All right, and I'm going to do the same thing for the dot. Copy, paste, go to the first one, Object, Offset Outline. I'm going to do the same 50 points. There. So now I'm going to take those two and merge them. So to select them both, I hold my control key down, left click, merge elements. Now I've got a shape that's almost the shape of that. I don't want that hole, so I'm going to delete it. And then I'm going to give that another color so you can see it. All right, so that's another way you can create it. I already have the shape generated now twice. So now how do we actually create that applique file? All right, so you'll take this and you can do things to speed up your process, which, you know, the faster you do things, generally the better off you'll be, right? So right here you can use change element from one type to another and say, all right, I want to change it to an applique, or I want to change it to a walk normal. You can decide what you want it to be. I'm going to say a walk normal. And what did that just get me? So if I turn off my art, you'll see now I have a walk in the shape of that. So I can copy paste that, give it another color, copy paste, that's Control C, Control V. And then if I hold my control key down, I can then click on the single line, change that to a tackle, 30. All right, and then I can copy and paste that, change it to a satin, width of 40. There. So now I've got that. So then it's just a matter of digitizing the name. I did that earlier, but that's just, you know, you work through the design, digitizing it. Now you can always do the auto convert thing and then play with it. Auto convert's fast. I'll show you how to do that just again for grins. So here's that original shape. I can come over here, convert. Oh, I don't want to. Yeah, there it is. So just by clicking that button, it went ahead and converted it to stitches. And you can decide whether you like it or not, modify it. You can see some of these, actually, kind of like, yeah, I would want this to go the other way, right? So I'd want this on top, not below, so I'd have to change the splices. But again, it's personal preference. And then some of this I'd want to clean up personally, but I don't like that splice. But it gets you nearly there, right? So then you can play with it. The other way is you just digitize it from by hand and go from the beginning to the end until you have your design. Okay, so that was a really quick way to do an outline. So let's see, that was that one. How do you take clip art that isn't very clear and enlarge it for digitizing? Well, unfortunately, there's really no easy way to do that. You take whatever art you're given, and let's see, blurry heart. So I found a picture. So it's as clear as your art is how easy or hard it's going to be to digitize, right? So if you have something that is, you know, silly small, you scale it up and it blows out to where you can barely see anything, well, there's no way to clean it up easily or correctly. So what you're going to need to do is just eyeball it. So there's more flexibility that way for you, you know, trying to guess what the original intent is. Your best bet would be to go contact your client and ask them for higher quality art, something with more, a higher DPI, whatnot. Because otherwise you got to just eyeball it and decide whether you like that shape. I dropped my scissors again. How do you digitize a vector? Someone just typed in. So that's what I just did. Let's do it again. So I'm going to move that one. So to digitize a vector, notice right here, if I hold this button down, there's my complex. That's a manual. There's your unifill input. This last one right here is a vector. So left click, right click. It works just like the complex tool. It just doesn't have stitches applied to it. All right. So you trace around. That's a misshapen heart, but you get the idea. Left click, give you straight points. Right clicks, give you curves. Okay, so once you have your vector, then you can convert it to stitches. The only difference between a vector and, well, the predominant difference between a vector and a complex is a stitch direction. So if you want this to be a fill, I can then insert stitch, left click and drag. Now I have stitches. All right, and if you want to change that to be a decorative fill, well, you change your stitch type to decorative, and then oops, let me turn that off, change it to decorative, and then diamond, auto apply. Okay, so you can do all kinds of things with it to have different types of patterns inside of it. Okay, So what else do we have? So again, using your art, you know, there is no nice and clean way to take bad art and make it good. You just need a higher quality art. I know my clients like to give me things all the time that are blurry. I just eyeball it. You know, I start and do my best and send them an image to look at and see if I got it right. And if not, they'll point out what's wrong with it and I make adjustments accordingly. So that's just been a personal preference of mine. I know a lot of places won't even do that. They'll just say, hey, I need a better quality art, 300 DPI. Artworks is best. That's print quality. So if you ask them for vector art, half the times they'll know what you want. Other times they won't. If they don't, just, you know, 300 DPI JPEGs. That'll give you everything you want to know. All right. Let's see what other questions we have. Is there any way to slow down the trace? No. Be a neat feature. Maybe send that in as a feature request. But yeah, there's no current way to slow down the trace right now. It goes around it, eyeball it. If you didn't see it, trace it again and watch the laser on the screen. I like to stand to the side and kind of look at it at an angle. Makes it easier for me. I don't know why. It's probably habit at this point, honestly. I think that was all the questions. There was one that I didn't get typed in that got sent, and I got distracted for putting it on here. So let me just go open up the file and show it. So file, open, start, stop. That's it. All right, so I had a question that was sent in that was, let me turn off the fill. They said, hey, I'm digitizing this thing and I don't know what's going on here. I don't like it. It's not lining up and I don't know why. I want this to be there. Okay. What I always look at for those is where are your starts and stops and what are your properties. So first off, you'll notice that it's doing a connector stitch, which is a jump stitch from where this element ended to where this one started. Okay, so that's what's practically happening. One of the issues was they didn't like it ending here. They wanted it to end there. Well, that's just a matter of where these starts and stops are relative to your wireframe. So you can change that. And what I did down below, actually, I'll just do it again here. So this one, because the wireframe goes to the end, for whatever this pattern was, there's not enough room to put another space there. So notice if I just change the density a little bit, now it'll end closer to the end of the actual wireframe. Okay, so I can make it say stop there. Now if I go to the next one, I need that to start where the previous element ended. Where the previous element ended is where that propeller is. So if I drag my wireframe there, now there's no connector stitch anymore. It's just going to go straight from one element to the next. Okay, so that's the same thing I did down here, just to show how that works. So that's where you pay attention to your starts and stops to make sure that you're not getting, you know, unintended connector stitches where you don't want them. Okay. So I think those were all the questions I had. Does anyone have any questions that you want to type in, or trying to think if there's anything I missed? I guess I can flip through them real quick and find out. Let's see. We did that. Did that. Did that and that. Talked about that. Yeah, that was all of them. All right, everybody. That's all I had for the day. So if you have questions, please email them to applications@melco.com. Type them in on these feeds. We're having them next week. I'm going to do it on Thursday. So it'll be next Thursday, same time, same place. Let me know what questions you might have and we'll try to get them answered for you. All right. Well, I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend, and I hope this was a little helpful. You learned something, and I will talk to you next week.